2. The Rise of Julius Caesar. The assassination of Julius Caesar cannot be understood without first appreciating the extraordinary journey that brought him to the pinnacle of Roman power. Caesar was born in 100 BCE into the ancient patrician Julian clan, a family that claimed divine descent from Venus herself. Yet despite this noble heritage, the Julians were not among the wealthiest or most influential families in the late Republic. Caesar's early years were marked not by privilege, but by a precarious political environment and the dangerous balancing act required to survive in Rome's turbulent world. Early life and political beginnings. As a young man, Caesar quickly revealed ambition. His uncle by marriage was Gaius Marius, the great general who had reformed the Roman army and risen to enormous power. Marius's bitter rival, Lucius Cornelius Sulla, seized control of Rome in 82 BCE and unleashed a wave of proscriptions, political executions, against his enemies. Caesar, as a relative of Marius, became a target. Ordered to divorce his wife, Cornelia, daughter of one of Sulla's enemies, Caesar refused. This defiance nearly cost him his life. Only the intercession of powerful friends spared him, and he slipped into temporary exile. This brush with death hardened Caesar and taught him the brutal reality of Roman politics. Loyalty could mean execution, and survival required cunning. He returned to Rome after Sulla's death, determined to climb the political ladder. By his early 30s, Caesar had established himself as a skilled orator, a daring military commander, and a politician who knew how to win public favor. Military achievements and the Gallic Wars. The turning point came with Caesar's appointment as governor of Gaul in 58 BCE. Over the next decade, he waged one of the most remarkable campaigns in history, subjugating the diverse and warlike Gallic tribes. His conquest extended Rome's territory to the English Channel and the Rhine River, making Caesar unimaginably wealthy and granting him the loyalty of seasoned legions. These wars were not without bloodshed. Caesar himself boasted of killing or enslaving more than 1 million Gauls, a figure modern historians debate, but which underscores the brutality of his conquests. His commentaries on the Gallic War, a mixture of propaganda and military report, ensured his fame spread across Rome. Ordinary citizens hailed him as a hero who expanded Rome's glory, while senators grew uneasy at his power. Rivalry with Pompey and the Civil War. Back in Rome, Caesar entered into a political alliance known as the First Triumvirate with two of the most powerful men of his time, Pompey the Great and Marcus Licinius Crassus. Together, they dominated Roman politics. But when Crassus died in 53 BCE and Pompey grew closer to the conservative senatorial elite, the alliance collapsed. The Senate, fearing Caesar's ambition, ordered him to disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen. For Caesar, this would have meant prosecution and political ruin. Instead, in 49 BCE, he made a fateful choice. He crossed the Rubicon River with his legion, effectively declaring war on the Republic. The die is cast, he is said to have proclaimed. The civil war that followed was swift and brutal. Caesar defeated Pompey's forces in Greece, pursued into Egypt, and watched as Pompey was treacherously murdered by Egyptian courtiers. In Egypt, Caesar became romantically involved with Queen Cleopatra, further fueling rumors of his monarchic ambitions. Dictatorship and the seeds of resentment. By 46 BCE, the Roman world was a master. He returned to Rome, celebrated multiple triumphs, and assumed the title of dictator, first temporarily, then for 10 years, and finally, in February 44 BCE, dictator perpetuo, dictator for life. To many Romans, especially the plebeians and veterans, Caesar was a savior. He launched reforms, provided land for soldiers, relieved debts, and expanded citizenship. Yet to the senatorial elite, his accumulation of titles, honors and personal power was alarming. He sat on a golden throne in the Senate, wore the laurel wreath of kings, and allowed statues of himself to be erected alongside those of the gods. The Republic had been built on the idea of shared governance, annual elections, and the avoidance of monarchy since the expulsion of Rome's kings in 509 BCE. To conservatives, Caesar looked increasingly like a king, a role Romans despised. 3. Rome before the assassination. By the early months of 44 BCE, the Roman Republic was a pressure cooker of ambition, fear, and resentment. Caesar's popularity with the masses. Caesar's charisma and reforms ensured deep loyalty among the common people in the legions. He staged lavish games, distributed grain, and offered land settlements to veterans. His policy of pardoning former enemies, including many who had fought for Pompey, appeared generous but also made him vulnerable. These men, spared by Caesar, harbored lingering bitterness and plotted revenge. The Senate's unease. For the Senate, Caesar's power was intolerable. Each new honor seemed to blur the line between republican tradition and monarchy. At one festival, a crown was offered to Caesar by his loyal ally, Mark Antony. Although Caesar refused, the spectacle fueled rumors that he sought to be king. The Senate remembered Rome's hatred of kingship and saw Caesar as a dangerous tyrant in waiting. The calendar itself reflected Caesar's dominance. The month of Quintilis was renamed July in his honor. Statues, portraits, and inscriptions proclaimed his unmatched authority. In a society where shared governance was sacred, Caesar's overwhelming presence looked like the few events in human history are as dramatic, symbolic, and consequential as the assassination of Julius Caesar on the Ides of March 44 BCE. On that day, inside the theater of Pompey in Rome, a group of senators conspired and carried out the brutal murder of one of the most powerful figures the world had ever seen. What happened was not simply the death of a man, but the assassination of an idea, the Republic of Rome itself. The killing of Caesar not only shook the ancient world, but also changed the course of Western civilization forever. Julius Caesar was no ordinary Roman. He was a soldier, general, orator, and statesman who combined ambition with genius. In his short but dazzling life, he rose from a relatively modest patrician family to command the legions of Rome, conquer Gaul, cross the Rubicon, and seize political supremacy. To the Roman people, he was a hero, the champion of the poor, the provider of land, bread, and stability. To many senators, however, he was a threat, a man who seemed determined to dismantle the Republic's cherished traditions and replace them with monarchy under his own name. The assassination on March 15th was not a sudden act of madness. It was the culmination of years of political rivalries, civil wars, and personal ambitions colliding. More than 60 senators were involved, including close allies and even supposed friends like Marcus Junius Brutus. The conspirators convinced themselves they were saving liberty. Yet, in reality, their daggers opened the path not to freedom, but to a new form of autocracy, the Roman Empire under Caesar's heir, Octavian, later Augustus. The story of Julius Caesar's assassination is gripping not only because of its bloodshed and betrayal, but also because it embodies timeless themes: power and ambition, loyalty and treachery, reform and reaction. It shows us how fragile political systems can be when ambition meets fear, and how the death of one leader can send ripples across centuries. In this exploration, we will move step by step through the drama: Caesar's meteoric rise, the fragile state of the Republic, the plotting of the conspirators, the bloody climax of the Ides of March, and the far-reaching consequences that reshaped Rome forever. By the end, we will see why this event remains one of the most studied, remembered, and retold moments in history, not just as an ancient story, but as a universal warning about power, politics, and human ambition.